Doomers love to say the 9 to 5 is slavery. Weekends are a scam. We're modern peasants. Well, the monotony, the burnout, and the routine might make it feel true at some times. The fact is, the 9 to 5 is one of humanity's biggest upgrades. But before we get into all that, be sure to give this video a like. Comment what you like about the 9 to 5 structure. Subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. Link will be in the description below. Anyway, did you know the 9 to 5 came about because Henry Ford decided to shorten the brutal factory schedules that used to eat 12 to 16 hours of a worker's life 6 days a week? Yeah, the 5-day week and 40-hour cap were designed to give workers a life outside of work. The 9 to 5 was not the enemy, it was a compromise between total labor exploitation and total chaos. Meaning, yeah, you've got to have some kind of work done. Like Tim Pool says, work will always be required. And according to, what is it, How to Beast, 40 hours is nothing in the grand scheme of things for the number of hours you have per week. And yeah, also back then, weekends were not guaranteed until labor movements fought for them. Compare that to medieval peasants who have to work sunrise to sunset every single day or risk starving. There were no personal days for medieval peasants. There were no unemployment checks or food bank safety nets. Contrary to what the philosophical gamers said about how they have it better than us. Apparently, because they had all their religious holidays, the winter when they didn't actually do the field work. Contrary to what he said, they did not get the cozy winter breaks. They either froze, starved, or they rationed grain. Modern society lets you eat well year round because grocery stores and infrastructure exist. Even that free time the medieval peasants had was dedicated to survival work, fixing tools, preserving food, more mundane tasks, except instead of worrying about whether your boss would come in and give you a hard time, your life literally depended on it. So you couldn't exactly call in sick from fixing tools and preserving food or working the fields. Yeah, those winter months medieval peasants had off weren't exactly leisure activities. Now, Mike Judge did nail some truth in Office Space about modern work with pointless bureaucracy, dead-eyed middle management, and TPS reports. Though Jennifer Aniston put it best when she said, most people don't like their jobs, but you go out there and find something that makes you happy. That's the healthy mindset because your job doesn't have to fulfill your soul, it just has to fund your freedom. Plus, I'd like to point out that back in medieval times, you didn't exactly have a choice between being a medieval peasant or anything else at the time. If you were born a medieval peasant, you had to work the fields 18 hours a day, or you had to do other things just to survive. Just like my 8th grade world history teacher pointed out that everyone had to do agriculture until there were advances that allowed us to expand our horizons as in terms of career choices and such, or what we do for a living, because before such advances, everyone had to work the fields. Now, you could work the fields, or you could be a blacksmith. Well, now, you don't necessarily have to work the fields. Actually, most of us watching this probably never worked any fields in our lives. Comment down below if you've ever worked the fields. I'm curious to see if any farmers are watching this. Anyway, Doomers really love to hate on the 9 to 5 and the idea of weekends being limiting in terms of your free time. But what if I told you there are people who actually wish they had a 9 to 5 because their job hours can be wildly unpredictable? In my own experience, I talked about how I worked at a movie theater. There was no true weekend and no stable rhythm when my availability was 95% open. One week I could be off on Tuesday and Wednesday, the next week Friday and Sunday, and sometimes I would be scheduled outside of my availability, like the opening weekend of Rise of Skywalker. I was scheduled to start 6 hours before the start of my availability on the Saturday of that weekend. I was also scheduled to work a shift on Thanksgiving after I had put in a new availability to create some consistency. So, for context, I didn't put myself as available on Saturdays until 5 p.m. when I started, and that's when my availability was for the 8 months that I worked there, for Saturdays specifically. Yeah, I was scheduled outside of that for the opening weekend of The Rise of Skywalker. And then for Thanksgiving, at that point, I'd put in a new availability that was approved for giving me Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off, mostly to be able to pinpoint when I could do job interviews for other places. Okay, I didn't tell them that, but I did decide to take some control. But then I was scheduled on Thanksgiving because the way holidays worked, you had to prioritize the ones you wanted off. You had to prioritize them in order of which ones you really wanted off. So I wanted Christmas off the most. Thanksgiving wasn't a huge deal because the shift started well after the end of our Thanksgiving meal because we always do it around lunchtime. So everyone is done by 3 p.m. usually. It was way after 3 p.m. when that shift started. That's all I'm going to say. Now, it wasn't ideal, but I handled it with dignity, and stability was just impossible because they can and will try to schedule you based on the needs of the business, but that's minimum wage work for you. Heck, outside of minimum wage work, there are jobs out there that basically require you to work nights and weekends sometimes, like first responders. Yeah. You ever stop to think that maybe there are people who wish they could have that kind of stability? Yeah, people who bash the 9 to 5, I bet they've never had a job where you don't know when you work next week. Yeah, retail, restaurants, and theaters make people wish for a predictable 9 to 5. And again, first responders also have to work outside of the 9 to 5. So I am grateful there are people who are willing to work odd hours of the day and weekends to make sure that we as a society are safe. Oh, transit workers, I just remembered. And they signed that new bill adding new consequences to attacking a transit worker. Someone pointed out that they work 365 days a year, and that they do because they work odd hours of the day, they work holidays. There are going to be people who are working Christmas this year. That's just a fact. Whether it's police officers, firefighters, train conductors, train operators. Now, the schedule might be a little reduced for the trains and for the subway and such, but people are still going to be working because there are things that people need access to 365 days a year. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anyway, the point of all this is yes, the 9 to 5 eats half your waking hours when you add in commutes. I do agree that th- the commute should count towards hours paid, or at least it would be nice. But hey, compare that to medieval peasants doing 18 hours a day in the fields, 6 days a week, no safety nets, even long commutes and corporate monotony don't compare to manual labor in pre industrial times, especially because you can actually choose what you listen to on that commute. I would like to point that out. You could listen to audiobooks, you could listen to podcasts. If you have YouTube Premium with background play, so that you can turn off the screen, you can listen to videos like this. Anyone who's watching this who is still angry at the concept of the 9 to 5 and weekends, all I'm going to say is focus on what you can control, like what you can listen to on the commute to and from work. Now, for weekends, yes, even if they do become errand days, such as cleaning, groceries, fixing things, there's still days that you have some level of control over. If you manage your time correctly, you can choose how to spend them, unlike peasants who had no choice over what they were doing. There were no days off, or maybe there were the religious holidays at most. And hey, ultimately, at the end of the day, life is not all fun and games. It never has been. The 9 to 5 is a structured trade off. You are trading time for stability. So if you work a 9 to 5, you're guaranteed to work only within those hours. Maybe a little more outside of that. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the 9 to 5 is far from perfect, but it's proof that humanity's getting better at balancing survival and freedom. I wish people would stop fantasizing about the past and start optimizing the system we have now. Learn from the past, yes. Romanticize it, not so much. Let's take what we have now and optimize it. Like I said, you work a 9 to 5, you've still got nights to take care of certain tasks so that on weekends you can do whatever you want. Which is why I say the 9 to 5 did not ruin life. It made weekends possible. So I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. You let me know in the comments what you have to say about this. You let me know if I changed your mind on the concept of the 9 to 5 by reminding you that it is a massive upgrade for civilization. You also let me know if you work a job that requires you to work outside the hours of a 9 to 5. Because, like I said, there are jobs out there where you have to work outside of those hours, especially if you're a first responder, because emergencies don't stick to a schedule of 9 to 5 either. Make sure to also give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. Link will be in the description below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.